Okay, Dr. Dan Yachter, for this Wednesday segment of news, views, and weekly updates. Thank you so much for joining me. We're going to go ahead and jump in, and we've got quite a bit to cover. Last night we had standing room only crowd here for the Masterclass. My achy, breaky, leaky gut, all about gut health. So much we covered, all about how the brain's connected directly to the gut to the brain, the second brain the gut is known as the second brain. And so there's a lot that we discuss. I'm going to go ahead and jump into the highlights of last night and also discuss, or at least starting off, I'm going to discuss what is new on the health landscape. And you should know that the Florida Governor DeSantis, has officially banned water fluoridation across the state. I'm not sure we are the first ones to do it. Actually, Florida has now become the second U.S. state, according to the article here coming up. Florida governor bans water fluoridation across the state. Florida became the second U.S. state to ban water fluoridation after Governor DeSantis signed legislation calling it forced medication without informed consent. The ban takes legal effect July 1st, 2025, in a couple of weeks. That's when public water systems must stop adding fluoride and state regulators can begin enforcement. A national toxicology program review of 72 studies found consistent evidence that fluoride exposure lowers children's IQ scores and impairs cognitive development. That's not a good thing. Multiple states, including Ohio and Texas, are considering similar bans, while federal agencies reevaluate fluoride recommendations under new leadership. Research links fluoride to thyroid dysfunction and neurological harm, with doses as low as 2 to 5 milligrams daily, affecting hormone regulation. Thyroid dysfunction, that's not good. So the fluoride in the water source, the water supply, could have very likely caused your thyroid issue, or possibly even worse, thyroid cancer. Many European countries rejected water fluoridation decades ago. 98% of Western Europeans now drink non-fluoridated water. 98%. So thank God that has happened in Florida. Thank God we have a governor who's got the courage to stand up for the citizens of the state and made the necessary change, banning water fluoridation. That is a great, great thing. Moving on to the next article. This is a really important one. RFK Jr. plans crackdown on pharma ads in threat to the $10 billion marketing industry, or the marketing that they put in. $10 billion, that's $30 million per day that the drug companies spend. $30 million per day. It's been as high as $70 million per day in years past, but in 2024, $30 million per day, $10.5 billion per year. And what this article talks about is how the drug, this is from Bloomberg, and it says the Trump administration is discussing policies that would make it harder and more expensive for pharmaceutical companies to advertise directly to patients, in a move that could disrupt more than $10 billion in annual ad spending. I think this is a really good thing. Although the US is the only place outside of New Zealand where pharma companies can directly advertise, banning pharma ads outright could make the administration vulnerable to lawsuits. So at a bare minimum, years ago, they took out, in many of the drug ads, the side effects would go on and on and on. Many of you guys remember that. The drug ads are a little different today, where they shortened that or lessened the requirements in regards to fully reporting on the negative side effects or the side effects in general, or maybe even the deadly effects of taking medication. The drug company said, it takes up the whole ad. We need to shorten that. We need more room to talk about the drug. And he's saying, at a bare minimum, bring that back. Make it harder for the drug companies to direct consumer advertise. So the two policies the administration has focused on would be to require greater disclosures of the very harmful side effects of drugs, likely making broadcast ads much longer and prohibitively expensive, or removing the industry's ability to deduct direct to consumer advertising as a business expense for tax purposes. So I think at a bare minimum, it would be a really good thing to make sure that the public is made more aware of the very harmful effects of these medications. They're not side effects, they're effects. So that's one thing that's on the horizon now. Obviously, the drug lobbyists are going to be moving against that. But again, there is a lot that happens when you direct to consumer advertise drugs through TV, which is where most of this advertising is coming from, and you're influencing the general population in regards to the general public as to what they should be taking, which drugs they need, or swaying them into taking medications that could be very dangerous for them. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to jump into the content from last night. Very important information. Last night we covered, just to kind of give you the flyover, the basic flyover. What we covered is we start off with just the basic understanding of what is a GI system. How does a GI system work? What are the basic functions of a normal functioning gastrointestinal system from mouth to anus? How is it supposed to work normally? What are the things that can go wrong? We started with stomach acid, the gastrointestinal system, the gastro or the stomach part. Why is stomach acid so important? Why is a very low pH, highly concentrated acidic environment in the stomach so important for digesting food, killing off pathogenic microbes trying to come in? One of the first line defenses of your immune system is the stomach acid, the hydrochloric acid in the stomach, which is designed to kill, to sterilize. We talked about leaky gut. How does leaky gut form? And what happens if you have a leaky gut? We talked about all these things that get through into your system that should not get into the system. And then when they do, in particular, large proteins or pathogens, when they get through the systemic circulation or into the systemic circulation, the immune system will now go after these things, create inflammation in the body and the brain, which can spur off all kinds of diseases, particularly autoimmune diseases. So the source of most autoimmune diseases begins in the gut. Scientific American calls the gut the second brain. So we went through that. All the participants last night saw how there's a direct connection. There's really no end to the neurology, the neurological circuitry, the network that is what's called the enteric nervous system, the gut nervous system, and the central nervous system. There's literally no disconnection. It's all one neurological web. And that's why anything that happens in the gut directly influences, impacts, and really, for the most part, controls what's going on in the brain, and vice versa, brain to gut. We talked about how there are basically microbes, probiotics in the gut that make serotonin, dopamine, GABA, which is stored in the gut. 95% of all the serotonin that's made in the body, made by the gut, microbes stored in the gut. 95%. Serotonin, very critical neurotransmitter, very important for a lot of things, including your ability to sleep well, your cognition, impacts memory, mood, appetite control. So very important to know that the probiotics, the normal indigenous commensal bacteria, as they're called, living there, that should be living in the gut, produce neurotransmitters, which control the brain through the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve, or the wandering nerve, cranial nerve number 10, the only nerve that leaves the brain and really goes into everything, basically every organ, gland, you name it. And that vagal nerve has, for every one nerve fiber coming down into the GI tract, there are 10,000 going back up into the brain. That's how much of an influence your brain has on, or your gut has on your brain. The other aspect of gut function going on with those microbes, the bacteria, which we talked about last night, is the microbiota, or the microbiome. Almost all of it is in the large intestines, the colon, and inside of that colon, you have a basically you have an anaerobic environment where fermentation is taking place. The microbes, the bacteria, things of that are very commonly heard, bifidobacteria, lactobacillus. There are many different types of strains. Inside of the colon, they are anaerobically fermenting fiber. When those microbes ferment fiber, things like butyrate, propionate, acetate, short-chain fatty acids are produced. Those fatty acids are they're used as fuel to power the colon cells, the enterocytes, to basically push food through and do all the normal functions they should be doing. But those short-chain fatty acids that are produced, again, through fermenting fiber, the probiotics fermenting fiber, also do some other very important things in the body and the brain. Butyrate goes up into the brain and it controls inflammation in the brain. It also stimulates the production of BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is like miracle growth for the brain, keeps brain neurons strong and healthy, and the connections strong and healthy. Butyrate stimulates bone growth, hardening and strengthening of your bones. It also, in the gut, helps keep the gut barrier sealed so you don't develop leaky gut. It does a lot of important things. Propionate, another thing that's being produced in the gut, the colon in particular, propionate has an effect on your ability to burn fat. Propionate actually stimulates GLP antagonists for appetite control, satiety control. Same thing with acetates. All of these things have very critical metabolic, anti-inflammatory, hormonal impacts on the body and the brain, on neurotransmitters. Talked a lot about that last night. Talked about heart rate variability, measuring the sympathetic parasympathetic balance of your neurology, making sure that your body is not in a state of fight or flight or sympathetic dominance, because in that state, you'll have elevated cortisol, and elevated cortisol has a wrecking effect on your gut. When you're in fight or flight, you're in fight or flight. The body reappropriates all the energy that you need, the resources you need to fight, flight, or freeze in sympathetic dominance and in the adrenaline state. So it reappropriates energy away from feed, breed, rest, and digest over to fight, flight. If that happens, now you steal away from rest, digest, and feed and breed. So feeding and digesting is compromised. Your stomach acid will now go down. Food moving through your body is sluggish. Assimilation, absorption of nutrients is affected. When you are in fight, flight, chronically elevated cortisol production. So it's very important to understand the mental effect, the anxiety effect, the fight or flight effect on your GI system. Talked about in length the vagus nerve. Talked about the impact of dysbiosis, or an imbalanced gut floral environment on brain function, Alzheimer's implications, cognitive disease, early cognitive decline, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and the other, the whole host of brain diseases that could occur. We went over the GI map, the most advanced test available today on the market to look at your gut. It's PCR testing, genetic mapping of your gut. Your medical doctor does not offer this because the mainstream testing for the gut is either endoscopy, a colonoscopy. That's pretty much the gold standard. Cologuard maybe, which are useful in some respect. They give you a gross lay of the land, a high level 100,000-foot view, but they don't tell you what's living in your microbiome, your gut microbiome. It doesn't tell you if things have become overgrown or if there are opportunistic bacteria growing, if you have dysbiosis, if you have maybe candida, if you have pathogenic bacteria, viruses, parasites, protozoan, worms, intestinal issues with your pancreas and your gallbladder keeping up with producing digestive enzymes. It doesn't tell you if you have an immune challenge in your gut, looking at secretory IgA, or if you have gluten sensitivity, calprotectin, which is a GI inflammatory marker. If that's elevated, you not only have GI inflammation, but you have brain inflammation. Zonulin, we also look at that, which shows you if you have leaky gut. The GI map, the most advanced GI mapping study on the market, we went into detail about that, and we made an opportunity to get that test done at our office. It's a take-home kit. Many patients picked it up last night. You do one stool sample, send it off to the lab. I get the report back, and I do the interpretation for my patients. It is a very powerful study, a very powerful report, because it gives insight into not only the GI system, but it can show us how to rectify issues that have been going on for years. Remember, gut issues affect everything. You could have foggy brain, you could have memory issues, high blood pressure, muscle spasms, bone issues, weakened bones. You could have autoimmune issues, and it goes on and on. Allergies, asthmas, ear infections, all kinds, sinus infections, all kinds of health issues that many people don't relate to the gut could be coming from the gut. And we could solve that mystery with the right testing. I always say, don't guess, test, but it's not just testing, it's having the right testing. And that's what we like to try to offer to our patients at the office. I'm a chiropractor. The first place we start is with the spine and the nervous system. This is where all the action's taking place primarily. It is foundational. The spine is foundational to all health and healing. First order of business, the brain has got to communicate with the body properly. It can only do so through a well-aligned spine. That information, that flow has got to be open. And then studying for years as a nutritionist who uses functional labs to help our patients get an even better foundation with their health. We run a lot of labs at the office, but the GI mapping is probably our go-to, our number one go-to. And we talked again extensively about how helpful that test can be. Last night, we talked about probiotics, prebiotics, how you can feed the probiotics, and we talked about postbiotics. Most people have never heard of postbiotics. Postbiotics are what I mentioned earlier, the propionates, the butyrates, the acetates. These are known as short-chain fatty acids. They do come in supplement form, but again, these are the three ways that you can really enhance balance inside of the gut: prebiotics, postbiotics, and probiotics. We talked about the three major things to avoid to reduce gut inflammation, bring back balance, maybe even deal with autoimmune conditions, which primarily stem from the gut. So please, if you were unable to make it last night, if you live in the area, you're invited, whether you're an active patient or not. We want the community to get access to this life-saving knowledge that we dispense monthly. I've been doing these master classes close to 30 years, every month, along with me adjusting patients and giving out, basically we administer chiropractic care at the office. I use my hands all week long, hands-on, chiropraktikos, chiropractic, Greek for hands-on. That's what we do. But along with that, supplementally, I support my patients nutritionally, dietarily, supplement wise, and through these master classes. Everything in our office orbits around these monthly master classes. In July 15th, the next master class, Fixing Your Broken Brain. It connects directly to the gut master class that we just did, the second brain, the gut. But brain diseases are on the rise. There's really an explosion in brain diseases, especially Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. There is a way to potentially prevent, if you already have it, slow down the condition, maybe even possibly reverse it. But again, there's little in the way that's being done medically, with the exception of trial medications. So again, Fixing Your Broken Brain coming up July 15th, Tuesday, 6:30 p.m. If you're in the area, come out. If you haven't been to the office in a while, surprise me. Come out. Current patients, we had many current patients here last night. We had over 50 attendees. Many of our active patients brought guests, family members, loved ones with them. That was really cool to see. But again, whether you're actively under chiropractic care or not, you're invited. We invite the public to attend. These master classes are powerful. No other doctor's offices are doing this the way we do it. And not only do you get this knowledge, but you get all the slides. And when you attend physically, if you were here last night, of course, you know, I give out special gifts. I have resources that I give out only to the attendees that show up physically. So mark your calendars, July 15th, Fixing Your Broken Brain. That's the next topic, brain health, July 15th. We want you there. In the meantime, thank you for joining me for this segment of news, views, and weekly updates. Dr. Dan Yachter signing off. And again, if you want access to the articles, to the information that I'm discussing, join our private Facebook group, My Family, My Mission, where we have close to 2,000 members. And there are things that are published there and talked about that you can't find anywhere else. So we want you to join our group. Everybody have a great Wednesday. Thanks again for joining me. Dr. Dan Yachter signing off.